Today we're gonna give a little revisit to the bear in phase 5. As you guys know, there is a new set bonus, and bears are essentially, they got a new identity in level 60 as a bit of a support kinda tank. Don't get me wrong, they are pretty good at what they do. They can take quite a lot of damage and they do good threat, but they also bring a lot of utility, and that's their main appeal right now. Here's the problem with the bear, and it is a bit of a composition problem too, because if you got a feral cat, part of this problem is not gonna be your problem. But essentially, the feral cat tier 1 set, remember you can get tier 1 set bonuses even in tier 2 now, is that you give everybody 1% hit. If a cat will not do it for you, which they should, that means you are gonna have to do it, and that kinda sucks. You gotta get that 2-piece. And it is a bit of a problem because your tier 1 set bonus, the 6-piece, is actually freaking insane. The 6-piece for tier 1 is 20% extra threat. It doesn't get any more stupid than that. 20% threat is gonna be the best tier set bonus pretty much forever. And we also got the deal here that your tier 2 tanking set bonus is also really good, the 2-piece. If you swipe, you can make your maul turn into a cleave. That's a little clunkier implementation of the improved maul glyph that you can get in retail in Cataclysm, but it essentially gives you the chance to cleave. Now, once again, if you got a cat druid to help you out with all of this, and you don't need to give everybody 1% free hit, you wanna take 6-piece tier 1 core force right here, because that's 20% threat, of course, and then you take the 2-piece for tier 2, so you can get your maul to cleave. But if your raid refuses to get a feral cat because they hate killing bosses, you might have to go for the tier 1 cat set, the 2-piece, and that's really stupid. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, I will assume that you're going for 6-piece tier 1 and 2-piece tier 2, because it is frankly the best threat you can possibly go for. Very well, now let's take a look at the actual build. First of all, we're gonna go for Ferocity because it is less rage cost for our abilities. Then we're gonna go for Feral Instinct because it is more threat, of course. Then we're gonna go down here for Sharpened Claws because it is free crit. We are gonna take 1 point in Feral Charge. It is such an amazing ability. You gotta have charge. Everything is a lot harder when you don't have a charge. The interrupt factor of it is almost useless because you gotta be at range to use it. You cannot use it as a kick really, but it is still a really good utility to have a charge. Then we're gonna take 1 point for extra armor, and then we're gonna go down here to get extra range when we crit. And now we go down here for predatory strikes because it is attack power. That's pretty obvious. We're gonna go for Fairy Fire, of course. That's an armor reduction. You gotta keep Fairy Fire on the boss. Also, if you are out of rage, Fairy Fire is decent threat, so you can use it as a filler of sorts when you don't got anything else to press. It is usually expected that if you are the feral tank, you're gonna have to keep Fairy Fire on the boss at the whole time. I am gonna drop a wiki, by the way, on the Discord, on the Druid channel, that shows you the Fairy Fire so you don't forget about it. Very well, now we gotta spend 4 points, so we can go 2 points in Feline Swiftness. That's just for quality of life, so you can run faster. There is nothing good here. I like the movement speed. That's why you can take something else. There is not anything else really, unless you wanna go for cat. There is a decent cat hybrid build that you can go for. The reason that I am not gonna explain that build, the reason we're not gonna go for that is we got dual spec. Realistically, how many fights do you got in Blackwing Lair where you gotta be a tank for half the fight and DPS for the other half? There is a couple, and if you wanna be like a parsing god, I guess you are gonna have to do that, but it is not really something that's too important. You can still go to cat and do like a mediocre cat DPS for the 30 seconds of the fight when you're not a bear if you're the off tank, and that's pretty much the same thing. Very well, so we're gonna take 2 more points in armor here, and that way we can go down here for Heart of the Wild. It is 20% stamina, which is really stupid, and down here leader of the pack, so we're gonna give everybody 3% crit. This is one of the most important buffs in the game, so it is freaking amazing. All the melees are gonna be really happy about that. Very well, now we gotta go down to Omen of Clarity. Omen of Clarity is a really good ability here. We gotta take Nature's Grasp because there is nothing else really. We're gonna go down here, Natural Weapons, it is 10% more damage, and down here, Omen of Clarity. Every time we attack, we got a chance of getting a free ability, so that's less rage cost. We can do like a free maul or something. It helps a lot. And finally, we got 9 points left, so we gotta waste them somewhere. I'm gonna go for Furor, of course. When you go bear, you get instantly 10 rage, and that's gonna help you get a nice startup when you get a shift in. And we're gonna get for Enrage, for extra rage. You can ignore Furor and go for Improved Mark of the Wild. It is also a decent idea, but the rest of druids have to get that talent anyway, so usually somebody in your raid has it, so it's not gonna be your problem. problem. And we got 2 more talents that are also useless, so you can go for something like Improved Shred if you wanna do like a cat off spec when you wanna shift out or something like that. You can go for Feral Aggression to improve your demo shout a little bit. You still as a druid have to get somebody else to do the demo shout for you. It's kind of annoying, but you know, it helps. If you don't have it up or something, it still will do something for you. Maybe that's something you can go for. It's not a big deal where you spend those last 2 talents anyway. Very well, now for the runes, we're gonna take Gore for the head. It resets the cooldown of Mangle and it gives you rage. It is amazing. Then for the back, we're gonna take Improved Swipe, so we can get an AoE. This is gonna be all our AoE threat right here. It is really good. It is not as good as other classes AoE, of course, but it is still a really good ability. The bear traditionally had a very weak AoE experience, and this put them at a similar level as the other tanks, basically. For the chest, we're gonna take Survival of the Fittest. Once again, if your guildmaster hates killing bosses and they are not running a cat, you are gonna have to get Wild Strikes. Wild Strikes is global for the raid now, so if you're a bear, you can go for Survival of the Fittest. It's your crit immunity, super important. But if you don't have a cat in the raid, you're gonna be forced to go for Wild Strikes, and that freaking sucks. But hopefully your raid makes sense, so there we go. Thankfully, cats are very popular this phase, so you shouldn't have a problem getting somebody else to do the Wild Strikes for you. For the bracers, we're gonna take Improved Regeneration here. It is not nice, it's pretty useless, but it's the best thing you can get for here. For the hands, we're gonna take Mangle. Mangle does a lot of threat and it increases bleeding damage. It is just a really good ability. For the belt, we're gonna take Berserk. This thing is your best cooldown. You basically pop it and you get no cooldown on your Mangle, and it hits 3 targets, so it does a lot of damage. And you also get free lacerates if you run out of rage, so it is like your best threat cooldown. We're gonna talk about that in the rotation a little more. There is like a couple things you gotta consider. For the legs, we're gonna take Lacerate. Lacerate is your main dot. You just stack it up and it does a bunch of threat and it does really good damage. And for the feet, we're gonna take Survival Instincts. It is essentially just Last Stand, but for druids, you pop it and you get more HP for a minute. It's like a defensive cooldown. And of course, for the ring, we're gonna take Feral Combat because that's gonna give us 3% hit on all our kit. And for the other ring, we're gonna take Defense, of course. It took them 5 phases, but I think the druid runes finally start to make sense. Your stat priority is gonna be pretty simple. First of all, you wanna get your 6% hit. Your rune gives you 3% hit like everybody else, so you don't need 9 anymore, you only need 6. After that, if you plan to tank blackwing lair, I really recommend to you that you can get up to at least 8k HP in bear form. So I am talking full buffs, right? If you got all the buffs and you go bear form, you should be able to hit about 8k HP, or you're gonna get in real trouble tanking Nefarian, for example. It is not mandatory. You can go with a lot less HP, but that's where I would aim if I were you. And of course, for threat, your best stat is agility. Agility gives you crit, agility gives you dodge, agility gives you armor. It is the best tanking stat in the game, pretty much. Below that is gonna go strength or attack power, and below that is gonna go crit. Remember that defense gives you 4 attack power when you're in bear form now, so it is a decent stat too, you can consider it. Defense does almost nothing for your mitigation as a bear. You are already crit immune, and it gives you parry and block, and you cannot parry or block, so it's only a little bit of dodge. But it's still something you may wanna get if you can get it. Your rotation is gonna stay pretty much the same as before. On pool, on most fights, there are a couple fights with threat resets where this doesn't quite work, but where you really wanna get all your threat going is at the start of the fight, right? Because that's the part where you really gotta get an advantage over everybody else. So I like at the start of the fight to go Berserk and Mangle, 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 Mangle. That's pretty much it. Mangle is a really strong ability. You should be mauling the whole time too. That's basically your combo for the pool. You almost always wanna do your cooldowns at the start of the fight, unless there is a threat reset. Or in fights like Baron Geddon, where there is a hard race at the end of the fight to kill him fast. That's maybe something you wanna save your cooldowns for, but for almost every other fight, just drop all the cooldowns at the start. That also means your MCP buff. For your actual real rotation, no fake. First of all, you wanna keep Fairy Fire on the boss the whole time, of course. Then you also wanna keep Mangle on the boss the whole time. And then you wanna keep Lacerate stacked 5 stacks the whole time too. Lacerate does a lot of threat as well as Mangle, but Mangle still does a little bit more. So Mangle will go over Lacerate in the priority, although you still gotta keep your Lacerate stacks up. And of course, just like the warrior, if you got any rage left over, and you will have rage left over, you're gonna be queuing Maul the whole time. Maul is even better than Heroic Strike for threat. It is really stupid. But as a bear, you're gonna have a lot more rage problems than a warrior. That's kind of a whole different story. And sadly, it doesn't get a lot better with gear. I mean, agility, a lot of crit will help, but it doesn't get nearly as good with gear as the warrior gets with gear. That's kind of a big complaint with bears, that rage is still gonna be an issue. Not really an issue. It's more like you don't have all the rage that you want, and warriors do get all the rage that they want, so it's kinda not fair. I feel you. Now, if you're fighting more than one mob, it's actually gonna change, and in that case your rotation gets even easier, because it is basically swipe and maul. And if you got the 2-piece from tier 2, that means your maul is gonna hit 2 targets, so that's really good. Your AoE is really strong. I mean, the threat is not as strong as the other tanks, yes, but your damage is way stronger. So it kinda evens out, and that's one of the coolest parts about the bear. They nerfed the damage of warlocks and they nerfed the damage of rogue tanks for phase 5. It looks like the bear might be the highest DPS tank in the game, aside from the warrior memers that go full fury, and I don't know, that's a whole different story. I don't know how Warcraft logs works. But yeah, if you're playing a normal tank, the bear looks like a really high DPS option. We are gonna be clearing blackwing lair on the launch on 26th of September. That's, what is it, 3 days from now? I'm gonna drop a sign up in the Discord, so you better join it if you wanna do it with the chat, okay? It's gonna be a whole mess, it's gonna be awesome and stupid. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.